If you allow me, we would like to start. So good afternoon to everybody. My name is Roman Blaško, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to our today's debate focused on sustainability, organized in cooperation with the AmCham Czech Republic. The recently finalized recovery and resilience plans for Slovakia, but also for the Czech Republic, intend to spend a considerable amount of the money on the green economy. In fact, Slovakia is going to spend by far the biggest share of the total budget, around 2.3 billion euro. It will include spending on renewable energy sources, renovation of buildings, sustainable transport, decarbonization of the industry, as well as on the climate change adaptation. In order to mitigate the climate change and spend all the money wisely, the whole society must change and each stakeholder must do his or her share. That's why we at AmCham have decided to organize this debate, invite relevant and distinguished speakers from both public and private sectors so that we can jointly learn what are the opportunities available both in the Czech Republic and Slovakia for the private sector, as well as learn about positive examples presented by some leading companies so that other companies can feel inspired to upgrade their technologies for the benefit of our climate, society, and improve competitiveness of our economies so that the future is more secure and sustainable. Now I would like to give the floor to our moderator, Peter, who will guide us through the whole debate today. Thank you and enjoy the debate. Peter, the floor is yours.
Hello, this is Peter. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much for the floor and for the opportunity. First of all, I would like to give you some housekeeping rules. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to have you on board. If you want to ask questions, because this is about you asking questions, please do not hesitate and use the chat function on the website. I've already tried to use it and it didn't work for me. I hope you are better off than me. Please make sure that when you ask questions, you ask to everyone and don't ask privately. Otherwise, we will not be able to put your question in the line. Secondly, this entire session is being recorded. It will be put up on the AmCham website. And thirdly, we'll be happy also to provide you with a live intervention or real-time question after the end of the whole session, if we have time left, of course. But do not wait for this, use rather the chat functions because the panel composition is really strong today. I'm really happy to have all the guests on board with me today. So, as Norbert said, we are talking about sustainability today. Why is it so? Because saving the planet and reducing the carbon footprint has become the necessity for the kids of our kids. What is more pressing today maybe is the pressure that comes from our customers, regulators, national governments, shareholders, financing institutions, talking about green bonds. Basically, everyone wants companies to be green and to be environmentally friendly. What is good, there is also enough money in the public sector available. Or is there? This is the question that we will be asking today. So without further ado, I'm really happy and honored to pass the floor to Lívia Vašáková, the advisor to Prime Minister and Director General of the Recovery Plan section at the Ministry of Finance, who will guide us through the RRF topic. So Lívia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and many thanks, Peter, for giving me the floor and for inviting me to such an event. I think it is extremely important that the industry is discussing the way how to survive, because the EU Green Deal is now the main economic and not just environmental policy. Slovakia is part of the EU. Certainly, this is the framework where we are living. And either you adapt or die. That's, I think, is the logo or is the slogan of the EU today. It has been transformed in various pieces of legislation. We are strengthening our climate and energy policy goals, and this applies to all countries. So meaning really that the legislation and regulatory framework will be very different. And we are working already on the transposition here in Slovakia of the relevant EU directives. Then other negotiations are being done at the EU level, really to adjust these pieces to the national level. What is also changing are financing rule for companies, the new taxonomy. has been proposed by the Commission. So really, this will also change the financing framework in terms of what type of investment could be financed in the EU. What is there for energy-intensive industry and how they can survive in the EU that is so strict on climate and environment in a world that is following, or some parts are following, but maybe not at the same speed as the EU. EU, I think, it's more conscious about the impacts on its industry than it has been 1 or 2 years ago. So really, the mechanism of how to put a fair framework in place are ongoing. The Commission has presented its industrial strategy this month, and there was also an announcement regarding the preparation of the cross-border adjustment mechanism. That is a mechanism that should put basically our companies on an equal footing with companies that are producing in countries with lower environmental and climate standards. The impact assessment for this act is on its way, and it should be presented in summer this year. The Commission is also thinking about adequate level of funding, be it for companies, be it for individuals, in order to facilitate the transfer to green economy. And in terms of money, I would say that the EU is the most generous part of the world. I have been recently to the US, accompanying finance minister and discussing the future of the US company in Košice. And really, what we have found out that there is not that much public money on offer in various American states and on the federal level than we have it in Europe. I would like to maybe present the most relevant sources of financing that we have at our disposal. This is the Recovery and Resilience Facility that I will speak more in depth at the end of my presentation. European Structural Investment Funds. These are traditional sources of money, and this time really the conditions are there that at least 1/4 of the money will flow into the economy. Then we have special sources of money to support companies. Modernization Fund and Investment Fund. Modernization Fund is more for, I would say, traditional or transitory solutions, meaning that you can also go from coal to gas. And then Innovation Fund, that is really for the state-of-the-art solution and something between research and normal commercial operation. Also for research, there are funds from Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020. For regions that are undergoing transformation, you can benefit from the Just Transition Fund that in Slovakia is mainly aiming at the transformation of the region of Upper Nitra, but can also be used for 3 other regions, Bratislava, Banská Bystrica, and Košice. So the last part of my introductory speech would be really about the Slovak Recovery and Resilience Plan that has been submitted as the 5th the European Commission on the 20th of April. The plan is really focusing on green economy. As mentioned, 42% of our allocation will go into various climate relevant intervention fields, because green in terms of recovery and resilience plan is meant really to cover climate related expenditures. All the others that are linked mainly to environmental protection, like for instance, environmental liabilities, sewage, fresh water and sewage systems. This is something that has zero coefficient in terms of green tagging, and that's why it's not contributing to the green allocation of the plan. So as was already mentioned by Ronald, there are several parts that we have included. There is one element that is coming across various components, not just in the green part, but also in education, in effective public administration, in the healthcare sector. This is renovation of buildings and building of new energy efficient buildings. So this is something that will cover something like 2 billion euros of the whole plan. And this is also a component or an element that will require very strict consideration regarding construction waste, regarding energy savings that should go at the level of -40% primary energy, and we should recycle 70% of the construction waste that will follow after the renovation of this building. These are all very strict environments, and for the moment I think that there is not sufficient debate how Slovakia can achieve this. We also have a reform that should deal with the construction waste in our plan. So I hope that this part can start, I would say, the new era of construction in Slovakia and also elsewhere in the EU. Then there is a significant part devoted to sustainable transport, with railways taking a large part of the envelope, but there is also money for sustainable public transport, cycling, and electricity infrastructure for electricity infrastructure for cars. Decarbonization of industry is another important element, and this is something where really company can use the money to decarbonize their processes in order that they can comply with increased climate and environmental standards. We also have a component that should improve our adaptation to climate efforts, so meaning that investing into hydromeliorations, investing into national parks is something that should help us not just in the climate mitigation, but mainly in adaptation to increased temperatures, to changing weather conditions, and should increase the resilience of Slovakia. The last component in the green chapter of the Slovak Recovery and Resilience Plan is about renewable energy. This is something where Slovakia has also specific targets at the EU and national level. So we are in this component trying to support renewable energy in not just, I would say, in a way that should increase their share, but also to do it in a manner. So instead of using feed-in tariffs for new renewable energy sources, we would support auctions that should do the same job, but in a most cost-efficient manner. We are also having a look at the existing renewable sources and using the repowering scheme, trying to keep their life processes longer. And then the last part is about the flexibility of the grid that is vital in order to ensure really that larger proportion of renewable energies can be used in the system. Does not mean that elements that have not been included in the recovery and resilience plan are not important. For instance, circular economy, that is something that is very relevant for businesses in terms of industrial waste, are very important. And that's why the debate on the new structural and investment funds will be at least so important as was the case for the recovery and resilience facility, where we have received a record number of comments in the inter-service consultation. And I think the money that is in the traditional EU fund envelope is twice as high. And really the requirements on the green economy are coming there as well. At least 1/4 of the envelope should be used to these purposes. We'll be also undergoing similar scrutiny in order that we can assure that there is, I would say, that there is enough money for all important areas that Slovakia is facing in this bill. So with this, I would like to finish my initial intervention, and I would be happy to respond to the questions once the time is there. Many thanks, and looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much. So the basic key takeaways I take with me is that it's adapt or die, but there's enough money to adapt. So it's overly optimistic, I would say. Can I now ask Norbert Kurilla, advisor to the President of Slovakia, to share with us his perspective, which will be undoubtedly interesting, because also given your past career and future career, it will be very interesting to hear what you think about the European Green Deal. Is this the way to green and sustainable Slovakia? Because this is the title of your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody, and also to AmCham for inviting me to this important event. Yeah, indeed. European Green Deal, as Lívia has said before me, is a kind of a new economic policy of European Union. And I have actually one little slide for you prepared, and I will stop boring you with slides and picture. But on the just to clarify that it is really a comprehensive framework of all initiatives, legislations, strategies that basically put European Union and including Slovakia on a sustainable, on a climate neutral way, and at the latest by mid of this century. So if you can see this, the slide, you will see that it's really overarching, touching the industry side, energy, tackling pollution, supporting, circular economy, raising issues around biodiversity and nature protection, to really economic incentives, to green and sustainable finance, and much beyond. In the due course of my presentation, I will focus in particular on the climate aspects, and in particular the EU ETS reform, which is one of the central pillar in striving European Green Deal agenda, and especially tackling the climate crisis and preparing actually the European and the Slovakian economy for the next century, for the future, meaning being sustainable environmentally, resource efficiently, and also economically sustainable. So I would be rather speaking in my presentation about the sustainability for competitiveness. As mentioned as well, we need also a financial framework on top of the Green Deal agenda, and that's exactly EU taxonomy, which speaks about reorientation of financial flows towards sustainability. And it's a kind of a new approach which actually leads us to the fossil-free future, meaning that actually we need to be sort of independent over next years, over next decades, from fossil fuels, and replace it with a clean source of energy, including nuclear, decarbonized gases or cleaner gases, and of course renewable energy and energy efficiency. So in my presentation, I will also perhaps mention some elements that Lívia already elaborated, and that is that pandemic has really accelerated, the green and digital transition. And as we heard, this is also the reflection of Slovakian recovery and resilience plan. And up to 35% goes, for the green policies, for the climate-related policies, which is an immense amount of money. Just underscoring that it's not kind of a form of grants, but it's these are repayable money that we will need to repay by 2028. Now, let me turn your attention to the new area or the significant part of European Green Deal, and that's the agenda of climate action, and the agenda of EU ETS system, which is the kind of a backbone of European climate policy, reducing CO2 emissions, but at the same time providing incentives to decarbonize investments, and actually to support, at the end of the day, the green transition. As you know, we are now working on our national climate strategy that would reflect on the climate neutrality goal. We have already in the European Union a draft legislation, or actually agreed legislation, with the long-term 2050 target being, climate neutral, and the new 2030 target going to minus 55%, or at least minus 55% by 2030. And the EU ETS, of course, is the critical component, because it covers the sectors related to energy production, both for electricity and heating. It covers the industry, or the bigger industry that fits to the criterion attached. And then you have also non-trading sectors that also shape the climate agenda, and these are areas like buildings, and the new project Bauhaus for supporting renovation wave. Then you have the area of agriculture, you have the area of transport, and reducing emissions both from road, maritime, and aviation transport. And last but not least, maybe also the waste management. So coming to the discussion how we want to meet this minus 55%, and especially with the particular focus on Slovakia, since we know, and we will hear later from the industry stakeholders, that it is indeed for the industry part kind of challenging, because the investment needs are at the same time immense, but there are also quite effective safeguards that could be really put in place. In Europe, we speak about carbon leakage, meaning that we want to protect the industry and we want our Slovakia to be still industrialized and actually be ready for the next kind of cleaner future by making these companies more competitive. So the elements that we seek should be kind of reflected in this debate. It's the area of being cost effective, but at the same time criterions like fairness and solidarity are very much important, and also at the same time respecting different starting point. So when talking about the solidarity and the fairness, I mean also the cross-border adjustment mechanism that will basically protect and put a charge on the imported goods and services which do not reflect on the compatible climate policy, which, I mean, if they don't reflect on the compatible climate goals, they will be charged, and there will be levies put to consider this cost, which is now borne by the European industry. And this is a kind of a critical component when we're talking about the global efforts, because in the European Union, even though we are the leader, we cannot do it on our own, and we must seek a kind of a global engagement and global deal. So now, when we talk about the energy sector in Slovakia, we have a good constellation, because nuclear, and with the new blocks that are coming up, we will have a decarbonized electricity production already at the latest by 2030, or even some time before, because of close down of brown coal electricity production by 2023, because of upgrade and increase of nuclear. With the new third block, we will increase clean energy production by around 20%, which lead us to the way that we can actually decarbonize through clean energy other sectors, like for example buildings, which they will become anyhow quite effective energy, and from the climate perspective effective, because of decentralized renewable energy, having energy efficiency gains, having investments and in terms of full upgrade of the buildings. But anyhow, those will be fueled by clean energy, and it goes same for the heating sector. In Slovakia, we have very developed gas infrastructure used for heating, and this sector, heating sector, would need to be will be transformed over time, especially maybe using the decarbonized gas. I mean the kind of a new, not really natural gas, but kind of a blend with the blends of biomethane or new gases that could be used in the same existing infrastructure. And equally, it could go, for the new types of project, and having other technologies, not only for the heating but also for the industrial part, like for example hydrogen, that has quite some potential in Slovakia. And now we know that the new hydrogen strategy will be presented by the government in coming weeks. And for example, there are already in Europe some steel manufacturers that already test and experiment with the hydrogen as a fuel for steel making. So this kind of new tech and clean tech and green tech that will be accompanied by implementing Green Deal will be quite significant. And the sooner we adapt and get on board, the less costly will be at the end of the day. So underlying, the principles that we should guide and actually ask for is to comply with technological neutrality. So basically favoring all climate free and climate favoring alternatives, focusing on the principles like solidarity. So it's not only the EU or Slovakia doing the efforts, but we need to really embrace it on a global scale, leveraging especially private investments. When we, for example, speak about the buildings, there is not always a public money available or EU money available. So we need to find ways how to get, a bunch of money that is somewhere laying around, but it's not used effectively in clean and green and sustainable projects. So the way how to motivate and embark with private capital, for example, through EPC, energy performance contracting, and other innovations that could help. So I think I will stop here. Maybe last sentence, talking about the circular economy in Slovakia. There is an existing platform set up in December 2019. Circular Slovakia now has more than 60 plus members that strive circularity as a big principles. So it's also nice to check, this platform and to see the collaborations and the projects that are ongoing, because it's really a significant also economic model that basically considers waste as a resource and try to maximize the value of resources in place. So I think this makes an excellent opportunity for business cases. So I think I will stop here and thank you once again for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Norbert. It was very interesting. What I especially liked and appreciated personally was the notion of solidarity and fairness or fair approach, because I believe if the transition and if the change is to take place, really it should not and cannot be just about the strongest and the fittest, but the whole economy and holistic approach must be included. So thank you very much for sharing your views. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to introduce the next speaker, Barbara Račan-Ježková from the Czech Invest, Director of Financial Support of Czech Invest. I'm very much pleased because my personal favorite way of learning is learning from others. So let's look at how you do it in the Czech lens. Barbara, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello. I have a very short presentation, so I will share it to you. So I hope you can see it. Hopefully, yes. So thank you for letting me to speak here about the financial support in the Czech Republic for investors. Maybe firstly, I would like to mention that for the investors, or the Czech Republic offers to investors investment incentives. With investment incentives, we can support foreign and existing companies in the Czech Republic, and we are focusing on 3 supported activities. It's a manufacturing industry, R&D in industry, so we call it technology centers, and then business support service centers like shared service centers, software development, high-tech repair centers, or data centers. The Czech Republic believes that the way or the future of the economy is through R&D and innovations. So we believe that the industrial R&D is the future, and we regarding manufacturing industry, we are focusing on support of high added value projects. Regarding high added value, is defined by the minimum level of wages and R&D activities like own R&D or cooperation with the universities and so on. Other possibilities how to support investors are EU structural funds. 2021 is a year of changes, not only due to the COVID crisis, but also because we are starting a new programming period for the European structural funds. So I selected only programs, operational programs, which might be interesting for investors and private sector. So it's not all of them, but we believe that the most important of them, and all programs are right now in the preparation phase. So as my colleague mentioned, Just Transition Fund in the Czech Republic, it will help 3 regions, Kiraľvarga, Moravia, Silesia, and Ústí region. And this program is focused on the transition from coal mining industry to new technologies, the transition of the landscape from this heavy industry to the better way, and so on. Then for investors will be important operational program technology and application for competitiveness, which will be administered by the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And again, the main focus is on R&D in the private sector, competitiveness of the small and medium-sized companies, digital topics, and low carbon technology like energy savings and so on. So these will be the main areas of support. Another option for operational program Jan Amos Komenský, this operation is administered by the Ministry of Education. So most of the part of this program will come to the education sector, to schools and universities. However, part of this program will be focused on R&D. And then last program from the Ministry of Environment, it's an operation program environment with its name, and this is focused on the energy savings, low carbon technology, and sustainability. Regarding these programs, the budget of each program is between 60 and 70 billion Czech crowns. In case of Just Transition Fund, the plan is approximately 40 billion Czech crowns. And as other EU member states, we also have, or we are part of the recovery plan. So we are preparing right now the Czech National Recovery Plan. It was approved on Monday this week by the Czech government, and it will be approved also by the European Commission in the following weeks. And maybe this is the situation in every, or very similar to every EU member country. We have 6 pillars. So the most important part will go to the physical infrastructure and green transitions and digital transformation. So these green topics and green projects, green projects from the Recovery Fund will be financed from 45% of the budget, and the digital topics and digital transformation 14%. In total, the National Recovery Plan, the budget is to approximately 200 billion Czech crowns. So that was all from me. I hope there was no technical problem.
Certainly not, at least not on my end. So thank you very much. It was very interesting. Now we have room for questions. I believe there is just one. And I need to ask Ronald and colleagues for help because I somehow cannot see the questions directly on my screen. However, to give you time to think about this, I would like to maybe start asking myself using the privilege. So can I kindly ask the 3 presenters to become live, to switch on their cameras, to be more personal in this online environment, in this post-pandemic reality? while you do this, thank you very much. While you do this, I have the first question for Lívia. So Lívia, it looks very promising, and it's also a question of survival. What would you advise me as a private entrepreneur, as a business? Where do I start? I'm suddenly aware that my carbon footprint is not favorable. I need to do something about this. And I hear from you and colleagues that there are funds available. What is the first thing to do? How do I make my way through this mess of various opportunities and threats?
Okay, it's a difficult question because I am not a business advisor, but if I put myself in your shoes, I would probably think whether my business has an opportunity in the current form or whether I need to adjust in terms of, I would say, the customers I am for serving, services or products I am delivering, or whether I need to just adjust processes. And this I would say, to put it in more concrete terms, when speaking about the hairdresser, of course, he does not need to change that much the product and then the service, but he might be interested in getting, I would say, green electricity or get to hairdresser salon isolated, renovated. But if you are, I would say, a heavy industry or energy intensive industry, then you need also to think in terms of your products and in terms of services that you are delivering. And this is, I would say, very sector specific. Once you have your field of interest, so whether you are looking at the decarbonization of processes, whether you are looking at renovation of buildings, whether you are just looking at how to get access to green electricity or how to maybe decarbonize your car fleet, then it gives you an idea where to look for various support mechanisms. So if you are, I would say, a kind of individual from the recovery and resilience plan, there are good news that we are thinking of we are envisaging renovation of 30,000 family houses. We are also promising 200 kilometers of cyclopaths. So this is something that is, I would say, for more individual citizens. When speaking about energy intensive industries, we have over 350 million euros for various businesses, mainly energy intensive companies that can apply, and the criterion is basically how can they reduce their carbon emissions in adjusting their processes to low carbon solutions. Then when you are an energy company, then of course opportunities from the RRP are from our component 1, where either you are a renewable electricity provider, you can be interested in our auctions, or you are a provider or you are a distribution company, and then some investment into distribution. More money, or I would say more possibilities will be available from the European Structural Investment Fund. This is not yet available, but what is more advanced is the Modernization Fund, where in particular projects from the heat industry are the ones that are being targeted this year. And definitely there for the Modernization Fund, everything that has to do with the transitory phase should be done, because this is the most flexible fund in terms of, I would say, the strictness of the environmental and climate considerations.
Understand, thank you. So now, what would be your key takeaway message for businesses? So, because I understand that my survival will not be so easy. It will take some effort to survive.
I think businesses are doing this on a regular basis. They need to adjust to changing environment, and that's what makes them successful. In this, I would say, a particular situation where the constraints are coming mainly from the EU level, I would definitely advise big companies to follow what's happening, because it might impact you on the regulatory side, but also on the funding side. And in terms of, I would say, smaller companies, they are not that much active in the green business. I think it's more of a business of usual. That anyhow, there are certain investment cycle where you need basically to renovate your building or change your car fleet. And there, I would say the adjustments are coming anyhow, because you are looking what's on offer on the market, and you need to respect the existing legislation. So there, I would say that you are more or less driven by what's available on the market, and the market needs to adjust to the regulatory framework. So I think that there, even though it's still necessary, it's not of an existential threat if you don't follow the latest green trends in terms of legislation and funding from the EU and from the national level.
I see. So the key thing is to look inside what can be improved, what should be to stay tuned and follow the development outside, because the opportunity will come. Okay, thank you very much. Now to Barbara, still reminding you, you can use the chat function, which I don't see, but Ronald has promised he will coordinate the Q&A session. Thank you, Ronald. Barbara, now to you. I will use the opportunity to ask you as a financial and financing expert. There are some concerns that too much money can somehow distort or damage or spoil the markets. There are some signals that already the raw material price is basically reacting to this overflow of money. Is this a real threat? Is this something that we need to think about centrally, or is this just a speculation? What do you think?
Well, in my work, I'm handling with financial support programs. So I believe that these programs are helping investors and companies, regardless the size of the enterprise, like from large companies to small and medium-sized companies. So I know that according to different economic theories, the financial support damage the market. That might be true. However, in case that it's a system for all EU member countries, it's not so easy to cancel the financial support. But I believe that regarding this project, especially the R&D projects and these transition funds, they are very helpful for business environment.
Okay, so nothing to worry about. We should remain optimistic and work towards the green objective. Okay. Yes. And what would be your one-sentence key deliverable to the colleagues from the private sector and businesses?
Well, the investors should remember that there are some possibilities. So don't feel free to ask if, in case that you have some interesting project and investment project or some transition project, new technology or something like this. Feel free to ask if there are some possibilities, and I believe that we find some.
That's very optimistic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Before I pass the floor to Ronald for questions, of course, I cannot miss the chance to ask Norbert. Hello, Norbert. I know that your heart is very close to effective buildings and architectural stuff in general. In this regard, when I was doing my research preparing for this session, I could not but notice some doubts that we are all very hoping very much for smart solutions. So smart is the buzzword, but we are fearing sometimes that we end up with polystyrene. What would you say to this? How do we want to overcome the usual stereotypical view that energy efficiency and effective buildings and new generation architecture is not just about replacing old windows and doors, and not about putting extra polystyrene on the building coating?
Exactly. So I may contribute. I realized that I didn't turn on my video when I was speaking before, but now I can. But coming to the buildings and to the infrastructure as such, I think it's about the health at the end of the day. Having good environment to be in. It's not just saving the bill and saving money on your energy bill. I mean. But it's a comprehensive story of where you live, how you want to benefit from the place where you live, and actually how you utilize the modern technology combined with digitalization, and at the same time how to modernize the place you are staying. So buildings are a good example you mentioned, and I think Ronald was also asking in his question that if if we are capable to actually manage this chunk of money that is now coming to the building sector, especially for the full renovation and retrofitting. So I think there is capacity, certainly, because we have individual houses, we have residential areas, we have business complexes and business buildings, we have cultural and heritage site buildings, have abandoned, land which needs to be revitalized and create new energy and culture. So you have different types of buildings. The main point is that actually the more you invest, basically you will get those money return in time, but in the meantime you get also many benefits. I talked about the health, the quality of life, and many others. So when we talk about the residential area, I think Recovery Fund will support of up to 500 million euros the individual houses with full renovation, meaning not just changing the window and putting more polystyrene, but rather, designing it smartly with renewable energy and water retention, water reuse, with green roofs, green vegetation. Actually, sustainability in the building is much more. It's also about the materials you are using, what kind of, if they can last over time, or you need to change them after 5 years because you have cheaper options that are not so sustainable, but over time basically you will double or triple your investment costs. So I think you have different approaches. I would certainly favor upgrades because we have huge investment deficit in the buildings. They are really very old, not efficient at all. So we can turn them into living areas for everybody. So I think it's a good opportunity to use the money available and go for it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This was also very optimistic. And what would be your key takeaway for colleagues listening to us now?
Actually, I don't know who is listening, but
it's businesses. It's businesses eager to get some money.
Stay tuned. I mean, many of the businesses are following, the developments, and I would actually advise that investment into sustainability is in the long term safeguarding competitiveness. So, I mean, maybe it's easier said than done, but when you are postponing and pushing it ahead, the cost of inaction will be much higher at the later stage.
Excellent, understood. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to pass the floor to Ronald to help me with questions, because I believe you can see the flashing sign panic behind me, because I cannot see the chat function in my tablet. So Ronald, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Peter, my pleasure to be an assistant. I can read it, or I can say it what I thought I would like to ask the speakers. It seems to me that a big chunk of the money should be really utilized by the public sector. But what is the capacity of the public sector to absorb this money? You just don't need to go very much into the past to see that we haven't been able to draw these funds. And now with so much renovation and so many projects to be implemented, we really need much better public sort of infrastructure, and public sector being able and being maybe supplied by competent people like you three, so that this money is really used wisely and to the extent we plan. So is there any plan to sort of boost and help the public sector, especially municipalities? When we speak about schools, about hospitals, I think, the central government is maybe fine, but municipalities I personally consider to be a weak point. And the second question, if I may ask, and I will use this opportunity, Martin, my colleague, is asking, building the circular economy requires innovative new products and collaboration across sectors. What tools can we use in order to achieve effective cross-sectoral collaboration? That's actually something what I wanted to ask, because I think we have to, when we speak about the green economy, and now we would like to focus on the possibilities for the private sector, it's important to say that we need to change also consumer behavior. And when I see so many SUVs in Bratislava, big cars, and Lívia mentioned 200 kilometers of cycling paths, this is simply not enough, to achieve the change. So I personally think that there should be something like kind of mission, and not just for Slovakia, but for the whole developed world, to sort of have sense of urgency that we really need to do something, and it really requires each of us acting in a different way than we did in the past. And we are able to do it because I was just going to buy lunch, and people, without being forced to wear face masks on the streets, they are still wearing it. So there is, this kind of sense that, well, I am going to protect myself, and hopefully I feel also I'm going to protect and behave responsibly towards fellow citizens. And I think the same kind of urgency needs to be raised in terms of greening the economy. So I leave it at that, and if there is immediate reaction, well, I would be thankful for that. Thank you.
Maybe I can start on the first point regarding the quality of the public administration. I have been working as a commission official here in Bratislava for 7 years, and it was one of my main concerns that if this country would like to go from a model based on cheap labor and luring of foreign direct investment, it should improve its public sector alongside the skills of its population. So this has not changed, but it's, I would say, the most difficult reform that this country is facing, because it's really far spread. So going into various areas, we have taken a chunk of these reforms into our RRP, Recovery and Resilience Plan. So it deals mainly with justice, it deals with the fight against corruption, the business, some parts of the business environment, insolvency framework, and I think that and public procurement. But definitely there is more what should be changed in the public sector. But you also need political capital, so that's why the changes are, I would say, not that easy to do. And if you take too much into one, I would say, recovery and resilience plan, then you are risking that you cannot deliver on anything, because the political capital is just not there to push through all the reforms. Then regarding human resources, I have an experience of almost 10 months in the Slovak public sector, and it's not as bad as it maybe look like from the private side. But also there is much that can be improved, starting from the HR management in the public sector, right motivations, right conditions. So definitely there is a lot to do. I will have my opportunity to build an effective team plan in the Ministry of Finance and then at the Office of Government. But of course, the implementation will also depend on the efficiency of processes at various ministries. So there is definitely a lot to do there as well, and to set up various mechanisms how to implement the plan, to show also that what we have developed for the European Structural Investment Fund framework, it's not maybe necessary of the full strength to implement efficiently the EU money. So we will present next week new legislation that will govern processes for the recovery and resilience plan that is simpler, and I think it's also more efficient in delivering what it should deliver. Ronald asked specifically about municipalities, and I think there really Slovakia has this weak point, because not only that our public administration is not famous for its efficiency, but we have too many small villages that is also hampering any kind of efficiency. So what we are doing in the recovery and resilience plan, that we have 11 million euros dedicated to shared services centers at the level of municipalities, that smaller municipalities can join their forces and can do some functions together. And I think this will definitely improve the delivery of services to citizens, but also the efficiency of municipalities in providing these services. Then on the second point that Ronald mentioned on circular economy and the cross-sectoral approach or cooperation, this is something that is already happening at the EU level. The Green Deal. This is about the cross-sectoral cooperation, because if you look, have a look at the graph, I don't know whether Norbert can put it again on the screen. It's basically about various sectors that are coming into one goal that we need to decarbonize. But you need to basically see the industry, you need to see the electricity sector, transport, agriculture, etc. So I think that from the EU, this approach is coming, but the approach is very difficult because you need to put many people together, many sectors together. Everybody needs to somehow agree and to find its place. And I think that this is the most important aspect. Also, I would say, personal consideration, as I was one of the main authors of the Slovak Recovery and Resilience Plan, that after the crisis, after the pandemic of COVID and its economic consequences, I think there is just too much focus on environmental impacts, and there is not enough on social issues. And as we are still humans, and humans are going to elections, this might basically be kind of main risk also in the implementation of the plan.
Thank you very much for very open and straightforward. If there is any intervention from Barbara and Norbert, please take the floor now, but use time wisely because we are running just on time.
I might just very quickly. So reflecting on the capacities, I pretty much agree that, of course, the more remote you go, there are certain regions and areas that basically lack capacities. But on contrary, seeing other possibilities, when we talk purely about energy efficiency in buildings, for example, which is much smaller group of activities compared to the full upgrade of the building, it means that we saw quite solid number of projects, but what we always were missing was the money. And now the money for the public buildings like cultural houses, offices, administration, municipal administration is now changing, and underlying that many of the investments will go to individual houses. Half of it will go to individual houses, meaning that people will simply via application ask for money, and then when they meet conditions, they will be basically refinanced. Number two, very quickly, about the question about how we can actually what tools can we use to support circular economy. I think the example of Bauhaus and some partners that are active in this field brings together people from economy, environment, culture, and much more, that they will work collaboratively together on various angles, how to make it more effective, more green, but at the same time economically sound and viable. So this wave of cooperation is very helpful, and also supporting with some incentives as well, like people who simply install a building or an apartment with clean materials, circular materials, clean technology should be somehow incentivized through lower taxes or somewhat energy taxation. So maybe these two quick remarks to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we have more questions to tackle, but we will leave them for later, because now we definitely want to use the excellent opportunity to look at the topic through the eyes of private companies and businesses. We have three interventions. As the first one, I'm really honored to welcome Kiraľvarga, Vice President, External Affairs, Administration and Business Development from US Steel, a company which is now in the focal point of media and political elites and basically the whole society. So, Miro, tell us something about how you at US Steel view emissions and carbon neutrality topic. Thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much to AmCham for giving me the opportunity to share our position with the current situation of decarbonization, green economy, and Green Deal which is the hot topic right now, I think, among the European Union, but also out of the European Union. I'm going to try to share slides which I have prepared for this conversation. Not sure if it's visible. Can you see my slides, please?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So, the first of all, give me the opportunity to briefly present the steelmaking in the European Union. As you can see, the steel industry directly employs around 330,000 workers in 22 member states, which underpins up to 2.5 million direct, indirect, and induced jobs. So bear in mind that direct employees times almost 8, meaning the number of people who are fairly depending on the steel industry in the Europe. Here is for your image, how the steel companies, steel plants are distributing among the European countries. And what I wanted to get your focus on is that if we compare in 2009, where permanent capacity closure about 20 million tons in the European Union, and that represents somewhere between 10 up to 15% of the total capacity. And together with that, hand in hand, 80,000 jobs, direct jobs lost in that year 2009, which represents 25% of the total EU steel workforce. But in 2019, just 1 year, in 2019, the EU steel producer individually reduced production totaling 8 million tons. So compare 20 million since 2009, and announced cuts in direct job 15,000. So now coming to the point of the discussion, the decarbonization, the greenhouse gas emission, and the facilities which are available to make Europe more greener and leader in that environment. As you can see, the global CO2 emission from fossil fuels combustions and processes in 2019 were around 38 gigaton of CO2, out of which the steel industry direct and indirect CO2 emission represents less than 10%. And the EU steel's direct and indirect CO2 emissions represents around 0.5% of the total CO2 emission globally. EU steel share in global steel emission 5.5%, and the global steel production is 8.5%. So EU as the leader in the green economy, leader in the decarbonization, leader in the implementing the legislation, and not only legislation, but actual acts and steps and project and investment, which should be bringing the more environmental friendly environment, represents less than 10% of the global steel production and represents 5.5% of the global steel emission. I'm not sure I'm clicking the slides for you.
Everything's going fine. I think, Miro, you can continue.
Okay, so the next slide is the legal framework for decarbonization. And as you can see, it's pretty busy slide, but what I wanted to point out is from the side of emission trading scheme, which is in place here in the European Union and is under the revision right now, there is the environmental energy aid guidelines in place, and also carbon border adjustment, which is subject to be discussed for at least 2 years. And the intention is to introduce that fairly quickly, hopefully in the beginning of the next year. But look over some highlights which I'm trying to show is that the breakthrough technologies would increase the steel price by 35 up to 100%. the level playing field which we need in the steel industry, meaning that European Union is the net importer of the steel because the EU imports 30 million tons but exports 20 million tons. Competitive low carbon energy, the breakthrough technologies which should be implemented need around 400 terawatt hours of electricity, which is equivalent of annual consumption of the Germany. And the funding supports breakthrough technologies needed somewhere around 50 up to 60 billion euros of investment. This one is a slide which is stealed from the Eurofair, but we contributed to that slide as well, just to imagine how the steel industry is under the preparation with different kind of projects to try to minimize the emission of greenhouse gases, to decarbonize and met the target in 2030. And you can see in the area of circular economy, carbon direct avoidance, smart carbon usage, and carbon capture and storage, that there is a lot of project announced steel by plan within the steel industry in Europe. So to finalize my comments is that what we need as an industry, we need to access to clean and affordable electricity and access to clean and affordable hydrogen as well, because there is the hydrogen is a hot topic not only in Slovakia but around Europe as well. As you can see, if we compare the current cost to produce 1 gigajoule of hydrogen comparing to the same amount of natural gases, there is a big difference between the cost of that. We need the predictability of the legal environment, and the comments which I use here for the rules for phase 4. Phase 4 is the phase for free allocation of the CO2 allowances, and comparing to prior phase 3, it's more strict. It's trying to deduct from the free allocation based on the lowering the production in year 2019 and 2020. But all of us, we know that 2019-2020 was highly impacted by the pandemic situation. So the steel industry is going to be penalized at least twice, if not more, because we are going to receive less free allocated CO2 allowances as we're supposed to, just because of the pandemic, and we were forced to decrease our production. Lívia already mentioned several times the supporting mechanism, which is all the funds mentioned here, which European Commission is going to not introduce, but to facilitate, to produce the help and make the investment more incentive for energy intensive industry, which is very good. But we need to be sure that, like the question for prior discussion, if we will be able to withdraw that money, if we will have enough HR resources and project resource people to be able to implement all the projects, invest money and withdraw the EU funds. And the last 4 or 5 bullets is about the legislation, about the safeguards of our internal market, about the, let's say, co-generation and bilateral agreement between WTO and the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade Commission. And just what the industry really needs is to get to the position that we can plan with a certainty, that the game and the rule of the game is not going to be changed while game is ongoing and we play the game. So hopefully those remarks create a lot of questions, which I do hope that I'll be able to answer. Thank you very much so far.
Thank you very much, Miro, for a very insightful and interesting presentation and the perspective of the first business. Now we proceed without Ronald, yes?
Yeah, if I may just have, Peter, of course, you are the moderator, but one immediate comment, which I think is very relevant, because what Miroslav presented, I consider to be very, very important topic. The last week, I had an opportunity to be part of the discussion with the White House director from the US National Security Council. And there was a question whether steel and aluminium is the strategic product when we discuss international trade agreements. And of course, his reply was, of course not. But should the international trade, and in our case, environmental standards, eliminate domestic producers, then it would be a concern for the national security. And I think this applies also to the EU. Do you agree, Miroslav, or not?
I fully agree. I think that the behavior of the relevant government, including the representative of the European Commission, should be fully in line with that statement. We, as a member of the Eurofair, the US Steel Košice, I had a chance to attend several meetings on behalf of Eurofair and meet the representative of the European Commission, and some of them are really relying on to protect the carbon leakage. They even say that they are on the side of the steel industry, that steel is the national security and security for European Union. But from time to time, as we present our arguments, we do not have such feeling that the European Commission is highly recommended and highly planning on the side of the protection of the steel industry. Again, if we look over the funds which are available, if we look over the legislation which is under the development, we can say yes, there is a hand with hand. The legislation is preparing and pushing the steel producer to be more greener and to decrease the emission. On the other hand, the funds are available, but we still have so-called state aid regulations, which are really strict legislation, which needs to be implemented and followed by all the member states and the government and the relevant private investors, that not the full costs are applicable for refinancing by the EU funds. Not all the technology is under the consideration to be financed by the EU fund. So there is a lot of obstacles, we call that obstacles, which we need to go through and try to get the support from the Commission, from the national government, and get a partnership and implement the projects to meet the target for 2030 for Commission, for European Union, as well as relevant member states.
Thank you very much. Definitely the question of strategic position of US Steel is of utmost importance now, and I think the situation on global markets in consequence of the pandemic has shown that maybe the EU institutions and also national governments need to look also into this area, which probably has been omitted for some time. However, now I would like to pass the floor to the next speaker from the private sector. This will be Martin Stohl, ex-DT Sustainability and Wellbeing Specialist from HB REAVIS or HB REAVIS. So Martin, you here with us?
Yes, I do.
So,
thank you very much.
The floor to you now.
Thank you. First of all, it's my big privilege to speak here, to be here, and to share our views and the angle of our business on the sustainability. I will try to share my presentation with you. Okay. Can you just please confirm that you see it?
Perfect.
Okay, excellent. So I would like to speak about HB REAVIS and our approach to sustainability, and I would divide my short presentation into two parts. In the first part, I would like to introduce sustainability and REAVIS. And in the second part, I would like to focus on the reasons why do we bother with sustainability, what are the drivers behind it. So at the beginning, I would like to start with a little anecdote. The REAVIS was started in 1993, but it wasn't a real estate company at the time. It was a group of 4 friends who started a business with the high-tech audio devices, and they shortly went out of business. And when they sold the whole business, they realized that the only profit where they made some money was actually the sale of the warehouse. So this is where the successful story of REAVIS has started. I've joined REAVIS in 2009 after spending 11 years in Canada as an architect. And soon thereafter, we have started with the BREEAM certification. The sustainability was still not at the center of focus, the most developers at the time, 10 years ago. And we have experienced quite a change of the mindset ever since. Our next big step was 2018, when we have introduced the WELL certification standard, which is a standard focused on the health and well-being inside buildings. We become part of the WELL Living Lab, which is an institution informing the WELL certification system based on scientific research. And we have used the COVID situation for revamping our sustainability policy, and we had focused on the zero carbon performance of our buildings, especially in operation, but also embodied carbon. What we're looking at here, there's a picture of the roof of the Navy station here in Bratislava. It's one of many buildings in the zone. The whole zone has received BREEAM Community's excellent rating, which is the first in Central and Eastern Europe at this level. And all of our buildings are certified either in BREEAM or in DGNB or other systems. Twin City Tower, for example, has received earlier this year BREEAM Outstanding, which is the very top, and at the same time, WELL Platinum. In brief, we are currently the largest. I'm sorry it's jumping, but I have some problems with my computer. I apologize. We are currently the largest office space provider in the European Union. We have 700 employees. We are active in 7 countries, and 6 of them we are building are commercial, mostly commercial buildings. That would include the Visegrad 4 countries plus Germany and the UK. The pipeline is quite strong. Basically, we also have developed our own ESG strategy and the roadmap to carbon neutrality. We have a CSR profile. We follow the UN SDGs. Of course, we are not focusing only on the buildings, which are our products. To be sustainable, we are also focusing on the running of our business. That's why we have developed our own internal sustainability policy. We have our own environmental code of practice, which goes way beyond the legal requirements for the construction. Since we are an integrated developer, we also do the general contracting, and as such, we have the ISO 14001 certification. Here's a summary of all the certifications that we have or will have soon. Pretty much the whole portfolio that we have is certified, as I had mentioned already. Basically, we are focusing in our ESG policy on 3 pillars. The environmental, we have some priorities which currently are the carbon reduction and green transport. the social, we focus on people, health and well-being, communities, employee experience, and the governance. So it's about open mindset, so supply chain, and its management. So this is briefly about HB REAVIS. Now I would like to speak about the motivation behind all this. And basically there are four principal drivers behind our effort for sustainability. The first one is the market. The second one are obviously the legal requirements and the EU commitments. The third one is the risk management and the running costs. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. And the fourth one is the social responsibility and our effort to make the communities around our buildings thriving and healthy. So we are not focusing only on the buildings and the interiors of the buildings, but on the public spaces around, on green spaces, inclusion, and harvesting of rainwater, etc. So these are the four pillars, and I would like to speak to each of them very briefly. So the marketing standpoint, it's one of the most important aspect for us as a business, because we want to stay in business, we want to stay competitive. That's why we do a lot of research. Since we're active in London, in the UK, that market is much more mature than ours here. And that's where we have done a lot of research, because we believe that whatever is happening over there, it's going to come here sooner or later. So basically, we have very significant pressure from the competitors, but also from the investors. But since we are catering mostly to the millennials, which are making up currently 50% of the workforce, this was also absolutely critical for us to understand what they are after. So what we have found was quite interesting. 40% of the millennials choose a company that performed better on sustainability. 64% would not take a job at a company that wasn't socially responsible. 75% would take a smaller salary to work at a company more aligned with their values. 83% would be more loyal to a company that helps them to contribute to social and environmental issues. And what was also interesting to us was that majority of them, which is over 75%, would not need parking space at all to commute, because they commute by public transport, by foot, or by bike. And this is also a discrepancy with legal requirements. Also here in Bratislava, we are legally obliged to provide a certain number of parking spaces, which may not be necessary. So that's quite an interesting part. The second part would be the legal aspect. In Europe, the building sector comprises of basically building operations and construction. 40% of the energy consumption is responsible in the building construction, and 38% of the CO2 emissions belong to the construction industry as well. This is quite significant. And this translates into 10 gigatons of CO2 emissions just for 2019, where I have stats from, and this is the highest ever recorded, so it's quite significant. 85% of buildings in the European Union are older than 20 years, and it is expected that most of these buildings will be here still in operation after 2050. So that's why the big push by the European Union for carbon neutrality in the renovation wave. It is expected that 35 million buildings to be renovated by 2030, and this is quite radical. Well, here in Slovakia, we are already since January expected to provide buildings, new buildings in the energy category A0, which is nearly energy neutral. But what we have found, basically, there is a problem with it. First, there are two problems. First is that there are no similar requirements for the carbon. We declare it on our energy labels, but there are no limits just yet. And the second problem is that all the calculations for buildings are based on the drawings, not the physical, real life performance of the building. So we call this performance gap. We have identified it. So we as a company design for performance rather than design for compliance with just the legal requirements. So this is the legal aspect, and now I would like to speak about the cost efficiency risks. So of course, with the climate change, the fluctuations of the weather are expected to be much more dramatic, and we need to protect our buildings against high winds, against hailstorm, etc. Also, the drought versus flooding risk is quite significant. That's why the landscaping and the retention tanks for the rainwater, it's absolutely critical as well. But also we had changed our mindset lately from keeping our buildings very shortly. Typically, when we built a building within 4 or 5 years, it was sold. Whereas now we intend to keep our buildings in a longer period of time. So we are looking at the implications and looking at ways of designing our buildings so that they can be still viable beyond 2030. So this is a program which we started. We call it Perpetual Building. We're looking at different aspects which influence basically our flexibility and the capability of our buildings to, for one, be energy efficient and net zero carbon ready, but also flexible for expected changes in terms of new clients coming or requiring some changes, maintenance, upgrades, and also, which is very important, the end of life considerations as part of the circular economy. That means that we try to make our buildings in a way that it's very easy to disassemble it and recycle all the material 100%. So this is the cost and risks, and the last one is the responsibility, social responsibility. There is still a label on developers, especially here in Central and Eastern Europe, as the bad guys in the field, and maybe rightly so to a certain degree. So we are trying to be a good neighbor, and we are trying to contribute and cooperate. That's why we have changed also the approach to designing. We are focusing on disclosure of the whole process. For example, here in Bratislava, when we were developing the NIVI zone, we have introduced a whole new campaign, which is called in Slovak ruku-na-to-susedia.sk, where we had invited the neighbors to comment. We provided information, and we even published 100 best ideas for improving sustainability in the neighborhood in a booklet form on the website. And we also allowed, for example, the public to select the artwork. We have done many changes in the design to accommodate, for example, the people with strollers, young families, and other people. So this is generally what I wanted to share with you. I would also like to say that I'm a part of the I'm a member of the board of the Slovak Green Building Council, and also I'm a vice president of the Manifest 2020 initiative, which has become recently an official partner of the new European Bauhaus. So we, as a developer, are trying to stay in touch with the city and with the public, and as well as with the authorities with various different ways, and share our knowledge and experience with everybody. So thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to respond.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful, interesting, Martin. It was quite interesting to hear about the internal motivation of the company, including the employer brand aspect, being the good neighborhood, and also thank you for being frank about how you think developers are being perceived, especially in this part of the world. It's unfortunately something we have to live on, but I think your contribution, because I remember the campaign, your contribution to changing the mindset is very valuable, and it's happening already. The transition is ongoing. So thank you for that. Now, I would like to use the opportunity that we are coming to a weekend, and we all love a good pint over the weekend. So who else can be the next guest than Kraut and Martin Požgar from Heineken? They will present to us their story about how the company wants to brew a better world. So René and Martin, the floor is yours. Tell us something about how you perceive sustainability and what experience you have with the topic. Thank you. I think we might have a technical problem. Martin, I can see that you are unmuted now. You're on. Okay.
I'm in. Just waiting for René. Seems he has a technical problem. Let's see.
But it's brewing, as you say in your business.
Exactly. It's brewing.
Perfect. Oh, and now we can also see you. I think René is having some problems with the connection.
Yeah, I just dropped the WhatsApp as well to him.
Okay, until René connects, do you think, Martin, we can ask that you start with your intervention?
Yeah. I will start sharing my screen. Let's start from there.
I love your office, by the way.
Thanks. Can you see my screen?
Perfect. You're on.
Make it just this way. So I just received a message from René that he's able to hear and see, but we cannot hear him, right?
That's correct. I believe it's entirely up to you now.
Okay, then I will take the lead. First of all, I hope that he will still able to rejoin. Yeah, he followed the whole session so far, so I guess he will try to reconnect. So first of all, we are really happy also to be part of this session today, and we want to show you how to say, how we are dealing with sustainability, but also responsibility as a company, as a Heineken company itself, but also in special as Heineken Slovensko. We are here in Heineken Slovensko part of the global Heineken company. To let you know, we are operating a brewery and a maltery here in Hubanovo. By the way, the maltery is the second biggest maltery within Heineken Europe. And we also have our own distribution network via warehouses across the country. And it means we are also operating with primary and secondary logistics and also direct deliveries to our customers. Our top brand, I hope most or hopefully all of you know, is Zlatý Bazant. And this is, how to say, our stronghold brand here in Slovakia, next to the fact that we're also selling the Heineken brand itself within our company. When we talk about our...
Just checking, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Good.
I'm extremely sorry, something went wrong here. So let me just quickly take over. So I started a nice introduction, but you couldn't hear me, which was about the world of Heineken. So Martin and I are representing Heineken Slovensko, a true local company, 51 years in the country, with 600 employees, all Slovak except 2, and you're actually looking at those 2. This is Martin from Austria and René from the Netherlands. Company founded in 1864 by the first generation Heineken, and then Mr. Heineken put his stamp, his name on the company in 1873. Now, every day, 25 million of beers are reaching millions of consumers in 192 countries across the globe. This could never have ever been established without the entrepreneurial spirit of the 4 generations of the Heineken family, with their passion for quality, their passion for people, and the passion for the planet. So this is where it started very early. We are in Slovakia, we are in Hubanovo. This is illustrated on the picture here, where we not only have a brewery, but we have a very large maltery business, the second largest in Europe. And within the scope of our business, we also have 8 distribution centers, from where we cater to thousands of customers across the country with beers, wines, spirits, radlers, ciders, a full portfolio. If we move to the next slide, please. So Heineken, brew a better world, raise the bar 2030. Actually very happy to present this because this was launched literally to the world just a very few weeks ago. So within Heineken, we take sustainability very, very serious. I mean, green is literally in our blood. It's resembled by the green bottle that has been going across the globe for decades. And it's by the spirit of the, what I said, of the Heineken family, because we are still truly a family-owned company. 10 years ago, we started a solid foundation, brewing a better world with great results. However, we acknowledged that this was not enough. We had to do more to bring progress towards a fairer, stronger, but also healthier world. And just like I saw from our colleague entrepreneur, HB REAVIS, we try to keep things simple. So we zoom in on 3 main areas, 3 main priorities. Next slide, please. It's actually so simple. It fits on a coaster also known as a beer mat. And this is what you see. So our main objective is literally to use the coaster, not only to keep it simple, but also to communicate internally to our people. What you see are the 3 pillars. It's zooming in on the environment. It's about social responsibility, and it's about our overall responsibility. Let's not forget, as an alcohol producer. So it covers the path to zero impact, the path to an inclusive, fair and equitable world, and the path to moderation and no harmful use. Actually, the green circle in the middle of the beer mat, which we call our navigator, resembles the footprint of a bottle of Heineken. And it's also a kind of source of inspiration, not only for the outside world, but also for people within our company to be reminded of what we're here for. to make a positive impact to society and to sell our products with pride and to have our products being consumed worldwide, but in a moderate way. A couple of things I want to mention here before I then hand over to Martin, who will then zoom in. Okay, that's all fine, but what does it mean for Slovakia and what have we established till now? So the road to zero waste and carbon neutrality. We are committed to become carbon neutral in production all across the globe already by 2030 and throughout our full supply chain, upstream and downstream. So suppliers, transporters to the outlets, our own suppliers, both upstream and downstream by 2040. 100% of the resources of hops and barley will go from a sustainable economy. It's about maximizing circular economy, whereby when we brew, we use quite some water, so we need to protect water resources. And we are committed to reduce water consumption to 2.9 hectoliters per 1 hectoliter of beer produced. On the social part, we heard already some examples earlier today, the road to an inclusive, fair and social equal society. We will actively promote inclusivity and a diverse society. We advocate for a fair and safe working environment. Our number one priority in each of our operating companies across the globe is safety first, safety always. And the past, let's say 18 months have shown how important it is to not only look at a safe workplace, but also as a healthy workplace. We want to make a positive impact on the communities in which we operate throughout the globe. And last but not least, if we look at responsibility, the road to sensible and harmless alcohol consumption, to offer a selection of 0.0 products. Now, in that matter, I think Slovakia has been leading the pack. We are one of the largest radler producing operating companies in the world. I dare to say that Heineken Slovensko already a long time ago started to create the category, shape the category, and ignite and excite the category with radlers, 0.0 beer, and now we innovate further with less and less sugar, also to promote healthy consumption. We promote responsible alcohol consumption. It might sound strange from a brewer, but we are not interested in binge drinking. We are not interested in heavy users. We are interested in moderate consumption. Beer as a social lubricant, beer to fuel the party, but please be consumed in moderation. And for that matter, this is where we dared to sponsor the Formula One with Heineken 0.0, with the claim, when you drive, never drink. Now let's move over to Martin, and he will then zoom in on what exactly we've been doing in Heineken Slovensko. Thank you.
René, thanks. I take over and I will go through 6 areas to explain what we did and what we are accident of our own employees, and since 18 months we had no accident on the site. Last year and this year still was a special one, I think for all of us privately, but also in business, about the pandemic. So it was really about securing the safety, but also the well-being of our people in this difficult time. René mentioned we take our responsibility in advocating responsible consumption. That means we invest a lot also in terms of in cooperation also with NGOs, that we are supporting campaigns with a focus on alcohol consumption for young people, for teachers, for parents to understand what does it mean. And we provide more and more also the 0.0 propositions in terms of no alcohol from that perspective. What also is important is that we label all our ingredients on our labels so that each and every consumer is able to read what is on it. And then a very important one is also growing with the communities. We are happy to operate our operation here in Hurbanovo. That means we have a very strong collaboration here with the community. We are supporting that. We also try to share best practices from the business parts to the community. And we're also funding social elements in that area. But we also spent, especially last year, quite some money also supporting, for example, the HoReCa business that was heavily hit, and is one of our big, strongholds of our business, but also then supporting due to the pandemic other areas as well. When we focus now on beer, and this will be covering the other three topics. Beer is a 100% natural product, and we produce the beer here in Novo, and you need just a few ingredients, but they are important. First of all, water. So we have our own wells in protected water areas, and this is extremely important to keep that protected, the water part. The second one that you need is barley. Barley that you then, convert to malt. And we are sourcing locally more than 80% of barley that is then, transferred in our maltery to malt. And we are exporting more than 80% also to our customers, to our other, of course, operating companies of Heineken outside from Slovakia. But out of this 80%, already close to 40% are also sustainable, coming from sustainable agriculture. And this is the direction that we are continuing. The other suppliers, also like for pack materials, all of that, they are following our supplier code. And it means they ensure high standards of business conduct, but also respect human rights and also the environment. Next then to barley, we need yeast for the fermentation. And this is also cultivated in our brewery. And the last element for people that like beer is the bitterness. The bitterness is coming from hops. And there we have also now kicked off a project, and we want to really drive this in that direction. For sustainable, but also local sourcing of hops. This is a big project. By that, we would have then everything locally sourced, 100% local sourcing to produce our beers. Looking to water. Water is important. We look for efficiencies, and we also, the wastewater we treat. We have our own wastewater treatment for the brewery and the maltery. And we are not just treating the water so that we can give it back to the effluent from the quality perspective, but we're also producing biogas out of this wastewater, and is then put back as an electricity source into our operation. And last but not least, was a big topic also today from the various speakers, is about decarbonization, drop the C. So what we are doing, first of all, we ensure that we recycle the waste. Close to 100%, all our waste is recycled or reused. We have CO2 as a byproduct during the fermentation in the brewery. This is completely reused. We have to buy some CO2 because for the non-alcoholic beers we have to add. In logistics, we focus a lot on reducing CO2. We have just introduced also an LNG truck that is saving more than 11 tons of CO2 kilogram a year. And we also reduce the CO2 impact due to packaging. And this we did also by looking especially to plastics. And the topic is also always the question, economy, ecology, how to look at it. And I want to share just two examples of investments that we did, but also showing you then in terms of how does the business case look like. So we have introduced end of 2019, beginning of 2020, a new can filler and can pasteurizer. Starting point was as well that we have been on the level of, on the max of our capacities. So we had to reinvest into a new can filler and pasteurizer. This was an investment of roughly 3.3 million euro. And by this investment, we achieved a reduction of 17% of water across the whole brewery and close to 13% of energy. And by having this done, and also by, how to say, being able to produce more here and not being, how to say, forced to import or to source products from somewhere else, we have a huge impact also on the environment. And the payback is 2.5 years. This is based on the Heineken definition of how you calculate a business case. But a highly, how to say, interesting project with a huge impact in a positive way also on the environment. A second project that we did just in autumn last year, we have some products and some SKUs also in PET. And what we did, we made a line conversion in a way that we reduced from the so-called long neck to the so-called short neck of PET. And by that also then doing a lightweighting of the bottle itself. That means each and every bottle is close to 2 grams lighter than it was in the past. An interesting side effect as well is that we, how to say, by that step, we also prepared for the legal requirement in 25 where each and every plastic bottle has to have a tethered cap, so that the cap has to stay on the bottle. This development is just done on short neck, so nothing is happening on the long neck version. So we prepared also for this direction as well. And by doing this line conversion, we are able to, how to say, reduce the impact on the environment by 100-ton plastics each and every year. And interestingly as well, calculating all the savings in the different area, this is a payback close to 2 years. So that means we are focusing, and this is always our purpose, first of all, to improve efficiency, so really reduce in principle the consumption needs. On the other side, then also reduce the impact on the environment by looking to say to new technologies, to new investments in all this area. Because what we strongly believe here in Heinrich Slovensko is we are now, and René mentioned it, we are now for 50 years here in Slovakia. We want to stay for another 50 years or even more. But we are very much aware that it's just possible and we can just achieve that in a sustainable way. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe, thank you very much, Martin. Maybe to close off. So yeah, we showed you a brief insight into our kitchen. As we say, brewing is like cooking, but with 100% natural ingredients. And within Heineken, our philosophy is that, yes, sustainability, it's not an option. It's a license to operate. We will have to deal with it, and we deal with it in the different pillars. As one wise man once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it, and we definitely want to be part of the conversation. Our company started with a very small brewery in Amsterdam over 150 years ago. In Slovakia, we have 51 years, and we still want to be operating and offering jobs and prosperity to the Slovak nation another 50 to 100 years. So this is why we're doing this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting. I especially like the part about the bitterness, but it was not bitter at all. I had a very sweet feeling about what you're doing in your company, so my big respect. Question to all three presenters. It looks like you've been tackling several challenges and basically mastering them in the area of sustainability or for the sustainability and green agenda. I haven't heard a word about any state intervention, about any third-party financing. What would be your expectation in terms of what we heard in the first part of the panel from the first three speakers? If you are to somehow be interested in any aid, any support, be it financing, be it cooperation of common schemes or grants, what would be your key expectation, key message towards the policymakers?
Now, if I may start, Peter. First of all, I need to say that, of course, it's our own responsibility to take care of our own destiny, of our own future. Then again, the reality tells us that very big investments are needed to seriously progress. And this is where, if you look at our beer business, if I would look at the numbers, certainly after COVID, I'm not going to sell one can or bottle or keg of beer more if I'm 100% green today. The fundamental question is that still true in 5 years from now? And most likely not. So I think this is where the public and the private sector need to meet each other. We are not going to lean back. We are not going to wait and sit in our seats and cry, please government, give us money. It's the opposite, but it can also not be only the industries and the private sector leading. So yeah, I was also, if you say a plan with certainty, I think my colleague from US Steel mentioned that, like, if you run an operation like they do and like we do, I mean, we are now already in the midst of our strategic plan for 2025. And sustainability is a very, very big part of it. We basically say, we as a market leader need to shape the category. And I'm also a vice president of the Slovak Beer and Malt Association. There we also talk with colleagues in the business. So I would say an institution where private and public meet each other and where there's reasonable requests. that contribute sustainable to, let's say, a better future, that would be very welcome.
So we will need to talk.
How to organize that? I mean, let's put all our clever heads together, because I think there's a lot, both what I heard from the side of the Prime Minister's office and the President's office. Indeed, all funds may be overwhelming, so we should also spend them wisely, of course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Martin Stohl, can I ask you for a few words on what you think about this? What would be your expectation from the public sector? What would be your wish list?
Maybe what I would say at the beginning is that all of what we had been doing and other developers have been doing in the field of sustainability has been done not thanks to the state, but in spite of it, maybe to some degree, because the circumstances and the legislation and everything else represents a lot of hurdles and does not recognize really any steps which go beyond the legal requirements. So this recognition would be a very good first step. I'm not suggesting which way it should be done. What could be done, it could be in a way of speeding up the process of approvals, let's say. It could be in terms of some tax deductions, let's say, etc. So that would be maybe the first step. We need to improve the legislative situation in countries such as Slovakia in terms of accepting materials which could help us to reduce the embodied carbon. For example, it is almost impossible to build with timber in Slovakia because of the fire code, which dates back decades, while in some Nordic countries are already happily constructing high-rise buildings out of wood. That's another one. Then liberalization of the market with green energies. There have been so many limitations, so many obstacles here. We already see some progress being done, but not sufficient, and there are also some quite questionable steps. One of them I would mention maybe the boiler subsidies, for example, the in Slovak kotlíkové dotácie, which basically promotes further the use of natural gas rather than taking the opportunity and basically promote a real green energies. So there are things which relate to the existing legislation. There were very limited subsidies in terms of photovoltaics, for example, and other sources. I believe also that the energy market with green energies, renewables, should be broadened to include the wind energy and especially the geothermal energy as well. It is expensive to invest in, especially if we want to use the geothermal for other purposes than heating to generate electricity. So that's where no private investor would go, but state could. So all of these things in one package. It's a long discussion. But we had been also commenting on the proposal of the recovery plan, which in our opinion doesn't quite reflect the renovation wave standards. There are many gaps and many missed opportunities. So I'm still hopeful that some of the comments will be implemented. The list is long, but I will wrap it here. Thank you.
Yeah, very long indeed. It's good not take a few government all the legislation changes that you proposed, but I believe this is something that we businesses suffer from jointly. Many things that you have mentioned are applicable generally. Miro, how about you? How do you see this in US Steel?
Well, first, something negative, which is here in Slovakia for energy-intensive industry. I like the comments made by my predecessors, but I wanted to right now to focus on my industry, energy-intensive industry. As many of you know that the electricity prices in Slovakia are among the highest electricity prices, not in this region, but in the EU at all. And even specifically for us, for example, about 60% of the electricity we produce by ourselves and consume here in a plant. And our legislation are forcing us to pay TPS, tarifa za prevádzku systému, also for the self-generation and self-consumption, which is on annual basis somewhere between 15 up to 20 million euro, depends on the production. So we can say that we pay like VAT for the potatoes or tomatoes which we produce by ourselves, which is not good, and none of our competitors within the EU are doing the same. So our competitive position is even now lower. If we go to the future and asking for more green energy, which is right now even higher prices point of view, and hopefully should be lower in the future. But what we need to produce the green steel, we need the green energy. So we need to intervention of our government to provide the rebate to energy intensive industry at the same level like Western countries do. So we can get the play the play level field at the same position as our competitors over, not speaking about the countries which are coming to our market from outside or abroad of the European Union. And going to CO2, a lot of being said, and even public people know that we are in this discussion with the government. It's not about the Slovakia only. Every government, the member state of European Union, has to have a make decision if they want to continue and have the energy intensive industry in their country or not. If not, they need to have a plan how to replace the gap of the income for the state budget, how to find the solution for employing the people who will not be having a job at the energy intensive industry. And let's assume that the government will decide that, yes, I wanted to have an energy intensive industry. I wanted to have an industry at all because look over the recent experience, pandemic situation, how the pandemic situation affected the countries within the EU. In Slovakia, the industry helped a lot to go through that pandemic situation and contribute to the state budget amount of money, not the sector which is not the part of the industry, not the sector of the providing the services, including to tourism. So do we want to save the industry, including the energy industry in Slovakia? If yes, then the government, and not only current government, but even in the future, because we do have a commitment for 2030, but also the commitment for 2050. So we need a common cooperation between the private sector and the government to find the best way how to decarbonize and sustain the production from the energy intensive industry. And bottom line, the last sentence from me for now is, it's not a doing favor for a private company or private owner. It's doing favor for the citizens. Because to decarbonize for us, it does not mean that we will be producing more. It does not mean that we will be producing higher quality. It just means that we will not be, we will be decreasing the greenhouse gas emissions. And that's for all of us, not for private owner of the company only.
Thank you very much for very straightforward words. Maybe I would like to continue on this a little bit, and maybe I would like to also invite Lívia to join us in the discussion. The key topic of this panel, of today's session, is sustainability. Coming back to US Steel, this is a company which is not only one of the key emitters of carbon in Slovakia, this is also a huge and very important employer. This is a company which basically suffers from several regulations. This is a company which needs to change in terms of the green agenda and is aware of this and takes this very responsibly. And on top of this, by the way, it needs to be competitive, which is a very tough job. What are the key prerequisites to be successful in this turnaround, in this transition? If I can ask Miro, speaking about sustainability, sustainable model for the environment, for the planet, for the community, and also in terms of competitiveness.
Well, I think that I partially answered that question in my prior talk. That number one, the East Košice Steelworks is competitive on the whole market and will be competitive if, number one, we will be able to get enough raw material to produce, which right now we are. Number two, if the electricity prices and any kind of media prices, including natural gas, will be at the level of our competitors within the whole market. Number three, if we will find the common solution to decarbonize, so financing from own sources, but also from the public EU funds. And number four, if the whole market will be appropriately safeguard, secure against the dumped imports from the third countries. I think that that would be the easiest way to answer your question.
Thank you very much. So it's about several changes, some of them difficult and taking basically a lot of bravery, some of them structural, some of them may be easy regarding TPS. What of these challenges or what of these calls can be addressed in your agenda or in the agenda closest to your heart, Lívia? If you can join us in the discussion, what is the offer of the public sector?
I think that I am not the right person to speak on behalf of the whole public sector. When speaking on behalf of the RRP that I am in charge of, that definitely we have financial resources that can be used for decarbonization of industry. We will have a competition bidding scheme, meaning that all companies can participate in the scheme, and there will be a real competition in order who is, I would say, the right investor in terms of the goal that we have to achieve. And also, according to my knowledge, there are also opportunities in the Modernization Fund. So meaning definitely that maybe not this year, as the focus is on the heating sector, but for next year, as the scheme is there for several years, not just for the 1 or 2, then the US Steel company can also explore the opportunities there.
Thank you very much. So we will know in months or weeks maybe to come the details about how to bid, what for to bid, and what the criteria are. This is how I understand it.
In the Recovery and Resilience Plan, the Ministry of Finance and later the Office of the Government will be the coordinator of the whole plan. But relevant ministries will be in charge of investment and reform. So meaning that for reforms, they will be the ones organizing inter-service consultation, preparing the legislation, and presenting the proposal to the government, and then following in the parliament. In terms of investment, these ministries are already quite busy in setting up their implementation units in order to be able to build hospitals, to prepare the decarbonization scheme, to prepare any other types of investments. So the role that we have as the coordinating body is really coordinating, providing help, and controlling at the end what is happening in relevant ministry.
Understand. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to use the opportunity and would not like to let you go, Lívia, because we have questions on you specifically. Sorry, although you claim not to be the whole public sector representative, you are brave and smart. So here's the question. I take the liberty to leverage on Ronald's question regarding Slovakia's ability to draw the funds efficiently, speaking about the green opportunity for urban development, smart cities concept, and sustainable towns. How is the national government going to ensure that there are enough qualified experts on local or regional level to look after the process of efficient drawing of funds? I think it was partially answered, but maybe you would like to add something, maybe also Norbert. Thank you.
As mentioned, I am not the one speaking on behalf of the whole public sector, but for the recovery and resilience plan, we are now setting up the methodology based on the legislation that was already presented in the inter-service process and will go to the government next week. The methodology will be more detailed than the legislation, and we would like to provide trainings, not just to the ministries, but also to the local government and to their main beneficiaries, in order that we facilitate the use and the understanding of the processes that we are setting in the framework of recovery and resilience plan. I don't know what colleagues in the Ministry for Investment and Informatizations are preparing, but definitely they are following similar procedures also for the setting up of new operational programs Slovakia, but they have something like 1.5 year or maybe 2 years delay compared to the RRP.
Thank you very much. There is another question. I will read it out loud, and maybe this time I would like to also ask Norbert, who has direct experience with service for the central government. What do you think about this? The question goes as this: concept of shared services at the municipal level is definitely a way to go for regions of Slovakia in order to streamline not only effective drawing of EU funds in small towns and villages. Lívia and Norbert, can you imagine such a concept of shared service centers to be implemented also on the government level? This is designing the government office, I know, but this was a question, please.
Okay. I am just 10 months in the Slovak public administration, and I see that there is definitely scope for some cross-border activity to be more centralized, probably at the office of the government. My experience from the Commission is that the Secretary General has a much more central and stronger position compared to the office of the government here in Slovakia. And one of the, I would say, shared services can be the state aid issue, where really there is no state aid policy at the level of the Slovak Republic. We have the state aid control at the level of the anti-monopoly office. And there are a couple of other areas, like, for instance, this Green Deal. It's not enough that it's the Ministry of Environment being a kind of responsible for the whole implementation and the whole strategy for Slovakia in the area of Green Deal, because Green Deal is cross-sectoral. So it should be somebody that is higher than one single minister in order that he can coordinate various ministries. In my view, it should be the role of the office of the government, but also it's quite difficult during the pandemic crisis to develop a strong institutions while working on various fronts. So this is the kind of idea that I have also presented to the Prime Minister, but for the moment, I think there is no direct follow-up.
Thank you. Norbert, you want to add something?
Yeah, I may make some reflection as well. So I can imagine it myself as well to have kind of shared services. You know, it's very delicate when you speak to the region and to the cities. Of course, they want even more competencies because they want to manage their territory. On contrary, when you speak to the government officials, they want to centralize mechanisms in order, you know, to streamline and to push more easily and smoothly. So there's always a discussion, but I can imagine that certain areas could be really managed via shared services and could be of assistance, especially to the smallest, let's say, very often not really well-equipped authorities, local authorities that are basically incapable to make some, you know, good proposals, good projects. So definitely yes. And maybe also one reflection on the funding as such, because many of these will be financed via European investment and structural funds. which are actually a little bit misregarded at this point of time, because the official central government is focusing on using the existing programming period, which will expire by 2023, and there is still a big chunk of unused money, which could be still used even more wisely. Then you have another chunk of money coming from recovery and resilience funds, which needs to be utilized in the next 3 to 4 years, basically. And then you have a new programming period. So I think the most effective, which you can really play with and be more basically helpful, is the next programming period, where you can actually embark on many good elements that were mentioned. And last but not least, when maybe towards Miro, as he was talking about the investment needs and all the problems. So I guess that the current tariff for the renewables will be changing over time, because many of the long-term contracts which were made, prior to 2009, will simply expire in 1 year or 2 years time. So also this scheme, the old-fashioned scheme, will be over soon, and through the auctioning, which is the new regime for the renewables, we could have a more robust role for the uptake of renewables in the whole system. And last but not least, the Modernization Fund, according to the current price of CO2, means for Slovakia at least 1 billion euro for low carbon projects for different operators, including energy intensive. So I see a great potential to focus on Modernization Fund. If not, there's also Innovation Fund seeking breakthrough innovations and technologies, and other funding opportunities that will simply arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert. I will not let you go. I cannot but use the opportunity of connecting you all to guys. As I said, their hearts are close to architecture and buildings. So if you look at the months to come, the next job is to use wisely the funds from RRF. What, from your perspective, needs to be done to make sure that we use this opportunity to the full regarding buildings, be it restoration or basically improving the building efficiency and quality? So Norbert, if you can start, and maybe Martin, if I can ask you to fill us in afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, according to the current legislation, for the newly built houses and buildings, you have already fairly high standard, almost equal to passive building, A0. So for the new ones, it's much easier because the legislation is very tight. What is not really working at the moment are the standards for retrofitting and for the upgrades of the building, and all the requirements what should be done when we talk about the complete or full upgrade of the buildings. So this standard setting is a prerequisite for good operations in terms of upgrading the building and tackling all variety of elements, not focusing on the energy side only, but really tackling the full scope of upgrade that is concerned. So standard setting, and of course the advisory in terms of creating kind of front office, because you will have individuals, you will have city authorities, local authorities, you will have businesses, you will have house owners. So all of them could be somehow entitled for funding, but they don't even know whom to approach. So certain centralization of funds management and certain front office that will guide and provide advices to the municipalities, to individuals, which chunk of money is at stake, what could be used most efficiently, and or even advise, don't even go there because you are simply not eligible. So that kind of advisory center could be helpful on top of the standard setting.
Thank you very much. A lot of jobs. Martin, how about you? How do you see this?
I could only agree with Norbert. I think he pointed it all out very well. I will take off my developer hat now and speak more for the Green Building Council, maybe. So from that standpoint, what we see is absolutely necessary is to focus on the structural changes, which will be lasting there is lots of talking, but we perceive that there is some what we call greenwashing, which is not going to the core of the problems. Definitely, the renovation of the existing buildings, it's a critical part of achieving the goals that we have in front of us, and also restructuring the supply of the energy in Slovakia, which will require lots of investments. So far, we have numbers that 16.9% of the energy coverage in Slovakia comes from renewables, and the ambition was to raise it by 2030 to 38 to 40%. By some sources, Minister of the Economy, Sulik, is speaking about 25%. So in my opinion, this is not very ambitious. More steps and radical changes are needed. And the problem is quite broad. So I would also welcome the opportunity to involve the NGOs or the sector of professionals which are not in the government but are capable of assisting, which is to a large degree happening already, I'm happy to say. And maybe I would also mention that the public buildings should go as a good example. And unfortunately, when I was speaking about these certifications in Slovakia, there is not a single public building which would be fully certified in any of the green certification systems. One brilliant idea, one brilliant example is the Presidential Palace, where there is basically an attempt to go fully carbon neutral, as I understand, which is very good example, and we need more of these examples.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have a question because we are coming to a weekend, of course, to the beer friends. So René and Martin, over the long history of your company, of your brand, you had to come through several transitions and changes. I'm sure about that, because the industry, the world has been changing. This is but another change. Are you considering looking into the opportunity of RRF? And if so, what would be your plea? What would be your request if you are to take part?
I don't know if Martin is still around, but I can start. Yeah, so basically, like I said, I mean, we are a family-owned company, and I think with a true entrepreneurial spirit, dealing with breweries across the globe, and that helps us a lot because we can certain trends see coming in other parts of the world that we then can tap into in this part of the world, and vice versa, whether it's with a pandemic or whether it's with environmental issues. We operate in countries where there's sufficient water. We operate in countries where there are water-stressed areas. So we take this very serious. So it's constantly adapting in order to secure your future. One of the examples, for instance, maybe Martin can tap into that is, I mean, we are always aiming at proudly sourcing 100% of our ingredients locally, no matter where we operate, and in that sense also giving back to the community. So also in Slovakia, I've done a first stint here between 2001 and 2004 as a sales director, and already then we had fantastic programs with farmers all across the country to source one of the main ingredients for beer, barley. We are the second largest malt producer in Europe. A lot of malted barley is used for our own production, but we also export quite some high quality barley, which is really recognized. Now with the climate changes, this becomes more and more difficult because we heard it earlier today. You go from one extreme to the other. Even though Hubanovo area has always had a lot of sunshine, believe it or not, even now in mid-May, it's almost flooded. So there's the climate influences. And then what you see is that farmers also are less and less intended to continue with a certain crop. They rather go for a different crop, which gives them higher flexibility, better yield, better results. So there, immediately your supply chain is at risk. And then you can buy abroad, but of course, in other countries, maybe similar problems. So we need to look at the integrated supply chain approach and to say why is agriculture important. I saw it in the European Green Deal. We talk about from farm to fork. We talk from barley to bar. So literally we work with the farmers all the way up to where you can have later today your fresh drafted Slati Bajant, I hope, in one of the nice facilities. Oh, you have to be on the terrace, by the way, still. And consume it there. So the full supply chain is important. So in that scope, we also need to look at, okay, how can we support those farmers to keep doing what they do so well in order to fuel that supply chain for us. We are there also to advise them with new technology. So it's also important to work together with universities, agricultural universities. We have a certain link through also the Dutch Chamber and the Dutch Embassy, tapping into the knowledge that you have, for instance, the university quite famous in Wageningen for agriculture, all to secure the future supply chain and to use modern technology to get better yield. So it's not just us asking subsidies for machinery. It's much broader than that. Martin, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add that if you really look to the climate impact in terms of also CO2 emissions, and if you look to our total impact as a company from the barley to the bar, there's a big impact coming from agriculture. This is where we want to take the responsibility in terms of local sourcing, but also to advise in terms of what the opportunities drop the sea in agriculture. And we as a Heineken also started up a project on that in different countries, like in Mexico, but we also piloting that, for example, also in Slovakia, to support the farmers also to also reduce their CO2 impact into the global total CO2 picture. And this is also in principle what we committed to as a Heineken company to the value chain, really from the barley to the bar, to be climate neutral in 2040. It's a long way to go. And that means we really are, how to say, have to start not tomorrow. In principle, we have to start today to really to work in that direction. So we are very much used in our own, how to say, facilities, but we see our responsibility much more there outside as well. And I think there's a lot to do really about science, also with universities, also as René mentioned, but we also want to take our role because we see the strong, how to say, collaboration with the farmers. They are part of, in principle, of our business, and they're also producing the product or part of the ingredients so that we're able to produce the product that people enjoy and should enjoy.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if I'm not mistaken, we are nearing the end of the discussion because the time given to us today is coming to an end too. So to conclude, for me personally, I realized that to make sustainability sustainable, we really need to talk to each other. And I'm really happy that we managed to do this today. And I hope the discussion was fruitful and beneficial to all of you. I would like to thank very much our distinguished guests and keynote speakers for sharing their insights. Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for bearing with us and to pass the floor to Ronald Blaško for closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, can you hear me, Peter? I think yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It was an excellent job on your part, but first of all, I would like to thank all the participants and especially the speakers who accepted our invitation. And I think we hit the nail because the discussion has been really live and even longer than we planned. And I can assure you this is not the last discussion we are organizing on this topic because, as we heard, we need to communicate, we need to get both public as well as private companies get together to speak and look for the viable solutions. So thank you very much for all your comments, contributions, and I look forward to our future discussions. Peter, you did an excellent job, so great thank you also to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.